always maintained that there's always these dangerous players all around him, trying to manipulate him, trying to sabotage him, trying to bring him down. The world is against him. He's got these suspicions that he just feels in his bones are what's happening to him. And we're all supposed to believe it. We're all supposed to fall for it. And that is what everyone in Harry's life has been telling him practically from the beginning, is that your suspicions, your emotions, your feelings don't necessarily measure up to truth. Oh no, that is just too beneath Harry. He is the arbiter of justice in his own mind, and he's going to make sure that we all know that the judge was wrong. 436 pages of wrong, and Harry's going to tell us why. Okay, the judge outlined it in 400 some odd pages that it still wasn't enough. It wasn't concrete evidence to prove anything. The burden of truth is not on the claimants. Of course, the claimants are going to sit in court and deny what is being thrown to them. The burden of truth is not on them. It's on Harry and his legal team. And the judge said over and over that that was not achieved. It was not achieved. And that's what happens when you are too dangerously introspective and indulgent the way that this man and his wife are, in my opinion. He's so worried about his own feelings, his own state, his mental health, how everything has affected him. This whole woke, progressive, new agey type of religion that people like Harry aspire to, because make no mistake, it has nothing to do with Christianity. You get so wrapped up in looking at how everything affects you, and you kind of make excuses for it. I think it's a really sneaky way that Harry and people like him and Meghan try to justify their own selfishness, but I don't buy any of it. We need to look at this man as a cautionary tale. We need to look at this man as a template of what not to do. Do not carry on like this. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jennifer. So lovely to have you. If you are new, welcome. If you like me after 5 minutes, why don't you go ahead and hit the like button? And if you like me all the way towards the end of this video, why don't you go ahead and hit subscribe? You have no idea how much it helps the channel, how much it helps me grow and continue to bring you guys more videos just like this. Okay, settle in. Do you have your tasty beverage? Because this is a coffee chat. I've got a nice refreshing iced tea. I want you to settle in, get comfy, because we're going to be talking about Prince Harold today. Prince Harold of the realm. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've heard the news, but indulge me, okay? Let me announce this to you as if you hadn't heard the news. Hear ye, all who have ears to hear. Prince Harold, I'm such an idiot. Prince Harold of the realm, the Duke of Delusion, also known as the Duke of Sussex, has lost his UK court case, you guys. He has lost his court case in the high courts of His Majesty's Justice against A&L, also known as the Associated Newspapers Limited. This man has been dragging this through the UK court system for what, going on 4 years now, a little over 4 years. And we all found out yesterday that the judge has dismissed all 97 claims, because remember, Prince Harry wasn't the only claimant in this court case. There were other really big names like Sir Elton John, Elizabeth Hurley. Sadie Frost isn't that big of a name, but you get the idea. Altogether, these claimants had 97 total claims, of which 14 were personally from Prince Harry. And the judge not only dismissed all 97 claims of all the claimants, of course that means that all 14 of Prince Harry's personal claims were also dismissed. How does that make you feel? Was your step not a bit lighter when you heard the news? Were your lungs not filled with the air of justice the way that mine were? I have to tell you, to know that an arrogant, spoiled, selfish, petulant brat like Prince Harry has now officially, very publicly, been taken down just a couple more notches really does, I'm sorry to say, bring a strong sense of satisfaction to so many of us out here who have been watching this man and his wife's petulant behavior over practically a decade. It really ramped up once they officially left the family, but let's call it what it is. As soon as that woman married into the family, things just got worse. And this has been going on a decade of terrible behavior. Let's get into it. Breathe in the air of justice as I tell you the facts. Okay, the facts are that the judge dismissed, and I'm looking at my notes here, not 1, not 5, not 10, but all 14 personal claims that Harry had in this court case. And now, you guys, because there was more than one claimant, right? It wasn't just Prince Harry, okay? They had 97 claims in total. They all lost. Every single one of them lost. And now there are legal fees that many are reporting up to 50 million pounds that these claimants are now going to have to be responsible for. Many in the media are talking about the fact that, of course, these claimants are insured, but what people are failing to realize is that oftentimes these insurance companies can go ahead and deny payout. I've also been hearing reports, one from Sky News Australia, that Sir Elton John is really the only claimant that has the money to cover all of these legal fees, and that he probably went in knowing that he was going to be covering things if all of them indeed did lose. But not only that, okay, but don't quote me on this, but I have read in some reports online that oftentimes these insurance companies, they don't typically pay out in these civil, personal, non-commercial type civil cases. So I don't even really know how much money is going to be secured toward these legal fees from these insurance companies. Some people are saying that, the coverage will only be partial, and probably Sir Elton John, allegedly, will have to pick up the majority of the bill. A lot of people are alleging that Harry and Meghan do not have the money to cover these legal fees. But moreover, that some people are also saying that these insurance companies may deny it. They may deny covering it at all. They may come back and say, you know what, we found this case to be sorely lacking from the very beginning, full of holes. It never should have been brought to court. So it's going to be interesting to see who's ultimately going to be footing this legal bill. But of course, anyone with two brain cells to rub together has been saying from the beginning that the only people that are benefiting from all of this are the lawyers. The lawyers are going to get paid in all of this no matter what, particularly David Sherborne, who he's pretty sketchy if you want my honest opinion, everything I've read about him, but he's still going to make his money, isn't he? So why did Harry lose? The judge laid this out pretty plainly for all the world to hear. Harry basically lost because he failed to prove allegations of illegal information gathering. He provided tons of suspicion, but nothing that could be actually verified in a court of law to be illegal. He wasn't relying on concrete evidence. The judge said explicitly that Harry and the other claimants were relying too heavily on suspicion. Suspicion is not evidence, folks. They couldn't prove landline tapping. They couldn't prove bugging. They couldn't prove phone hacking. And they relied too heavily on suspicion. And again, as the judge reiterated, suspicion is no substitute for concrete evidence. And he explicitly laid all of this out in a document that was over 400 pages long. I believe it was 436 pages, something like that. And the judge specifically went over with a fine-tooth comb every single one of the claims, all 97, and he wrote specifically why all of these supposed suspicions and evidence that the claimants said that they had, why in every instance it just fell short and it didn't prove what the judge needed to see in order to say, yes, this was unlawful, illegal information gathering. So let me repeat, suspicion is no substitute for concrete evidence. And that really hits hard, especially in light of when you really stop and ponder how Prince Harry, for practically his entire life, his adult life, has lived this way. He views and eyes everything and everyone with suspicion. He throws out claims and statements and allegations and accusations, yet he never really seems to come back with any type of solid concrete proof to back up anything that he says. And this is the way that this man has lived his entire adult life, and especially since he married Meghan Markle. We know from his book Spare that he has, since he was a child, even before his mother died, always eyed everyone around him with suspicion. Think about all the ways that Harry's familial relations all around him have broken down and eroded over time. And in my opinion, you could argue that that has everything to do with his highly suspicious, aggressive, hostile nature. All he does is point the finger at everyone without any sort of proof anywhere. To Harry, it's always these actors all around him, people that he knows of, even people that, he doesn't know that he think might be trying to hurt him. From everything from he doesn't get the same amount of sausages that his brother William got, to his evil supposed stepmother Camilla, who was coordinating and orchestrating these media campaigns to completely smear him behind his back. He's always maintained that there's always these dangerous players all around him, trying to manipulate him, trying to sabotage him, trying to bring him down. The world is against him. He's got these suspicions that he just feels in his bones are what's happening to him. And we're all supposed to believe it. We're all supposed to fall for it. And then Meghan comes onto the scene, and what happens? She feeds into all of these highly suspicious, delusional narratives that he's been telling himself over and over and over, and she reinforces them and she twists them to leverage her own agenda. But he's only too happy to assist her on that because this is the way this man has been behaving his entire life. So at that point, it becomes what? Harry and Meghan against the world, Harry and Meghan against his family, Harry and Meghan against the racist UK press, Harry and Meghan against Ravik and, his father. And now it's Harry and Meghan against the UK courts. It's like, you cannot make this up. This paranoid, suspicious, delusional world that Harry lives in, this is where we find ourselves. This is at the heart and the root of everything that is going wrong in Harry's life, has brought him to where we find him today. A judge pointing at him and saying, look, I have gone over this 400 pages worth, and your suspicions do not prove to me concrete evidence. And that is what everyone in Harry's life has been telling him practically from the beginning, is that your suspicions, your emotions, your feelings don't necessarily measure up to truth. They don't technically measure up to the reality of any given situation that he found himself in. But he's always said that his recollections, his emotions, his experiences are enough of, the weight of proof in his mind. I mean, didn't he say so much in his book In Spare that even though what he's saying or he's relating, it may or may not have happened exactly in that manner, but his recollection of events is enough to be put forth in the book as his true experience, so therefore it must be true. I mean, you cannot make this up. You cannot talk to someone or reason with someone who has a thick skull like this. When you refuse to listen to person after person after person after person talk to you and say, there isn't enough here, we need more. You're just throwing out veiled or false accusations, which don't have any sort of bearing in reality or truth. And now he's having a judge in a courtroom issuing over 400 pages of an explanation as to why his feelings and his suspicions and his emotions aren't enough to win a legal court case, and that still isn't enough for him. So now where do we find him now? After years and years and years and years of this selfish, delusional, petulant behavior, he's lost everything. He's lost his family. He's lost his military titles. He's lost his honorary HRH. He's no longer a working royal. He has no real relationship with his father, his brother, or his sister-in-law and their family to speak of. And that's just on the personal side. That's not even talking about all of these so-called lucrative media financial deals that he had cooked up in the last 6 years. This Netflix deal is in the toilet. They lost Spotify. He's lost his association with the charity that he founded in the early 2000s, Senabale. He's lost that. And how did he lose that? You had Dr. Sophie Chandauka go to him and say, hey, I've combed through all these financials. Everything that is going on here isn't right. We're losing money. We're losing donors. Personally, I think it has to do with your negative reputation in the press and also your wife's negative reputation in the press. You had someone who is smart, who is savvy, who knows what she's doing, going to him and saying, look, we need to change things. But his ego can't handle it. Then he sees someone like that who's actually trying to help him, who's actually trying to fix things. She's approaching him and giving him hard, honest truths that he doesn't want to hear. So he immediately, what does he do? He eyes it with suspicion, right? Here's yet another person out to get him. So then they have these boardroom financial brawls, which turn into what? Him and Prince Lesotho eventually abandoning the charity. And now you have the remaining board members, including Dr. Sophie, who now heads Sentabale charity, going after Harry in a lawsuit, claiming defamation, claiming that he went after her specifically because he was angry about what she was proposing to him about how to fix the whole organization. And now what do you have? The Invictus Games, which are literally hanging on by a thread. The Invictus Games are under major scrutiny at this point, and it all has to do with the financials. It has to do with the fact of Harry and Meghan's intentions. Now people are starting to play Harry's little game, eyeing him and his wife, turning around and playing Harry's little game right back on them. They're eyeing now Harry and Meghan with suspicion. And why are they doing that? Well, we find out that in 2025, the events for Invictus cost over $60 million for those whole games to be put on. And that was $60 million to host just over 543 participants to, as Tom Bauer reported, mostly empty venues. They're losing corporate donors like Boeing left and right. And so now Harry himself is left to carry the burden of corporate fundraising, and people are speculating he doesn't hold the clout or recognition. And now, especially after losing this court case and his reputation being further marred, how's he going to raise money for Invictus? And just because people aren't reporting currently about everything that's going on with the Invictus Games investigations, there still are active investigations going on with Invictus. There are active Freedom of Information requests going on right now with independent investigators. And these independent investigators are going over with a fine-tooth comb all of Invictus's financials from the 2025 games. People have questions and they want to know exactly where this $63.2 million spent went, essentially. Veterans themselves are demanding audits. They want to ensure and they want reassurance that Harry is not just using the games as his own personal media, vehicle or as a tax write-off for him and his wife. Veterans and their families want to know, are Harry and Meghan just using the Invictus Games to keep themselves in the media spotlight, to keep themselves relevant, and especially now, because that's essentially all they have left. And you can't escape the fact that it was highly controversial during the Vancouver and Whistler Games in 2025. People were really hyped up and ticked off about the fact that Meghan was indeed merching all the clothes that she wore to all those events in 2025 at those Invictus Games. And that seriously calls into question, are Harry and Meghan directly financially benefiting from showing up and being the face of these games? You have a charity here about wounded veterans. Why is this woman merching outfits? Merching and charity meshed together is not a good look. But Harry and Meghan don't seem to understand that. And to me, it strikes me as something so completely tone deaf of both of them. They can accuse everyone around them of anything under the sun. He can spew out and say anything that he wants. But if anyone ever comes back and turns his little game of suspicion back on him and says, hey, we've got some assertions of our own, we've got some reasoned questions that we want to pose to you and your wife, those people are automatically written off as haters, that are people that are just out to get him. This is the poison that Harry and Meghan bathe in on a daily basis. This hill of victimhood that these two seem so intent on dying on is almost Shakespearean in its tragedy. It really is. But fortunately, Harry lost this case. Thank the Lord. Like I said at the beginning of this video, it's about time that more of these petulant, entitled elitists are taken down a notch or two, because this behavior, especially in the public forum, is very, very dangerous. All it is teaching people that don't have a moral compass of their own, that you can just behave any way you want. You can say anything you want. You can assert anything you want. You can accuse anybody of anything that you want, and you don't have to provide any evidence. You don't have to provide any truth. As long as you are rooted in your own truth, your version of the truth, you're fine because you're telling your truth. It's so sick and juvenile. So do I think that he's going to learn from this painfully embarrassing lost court case? Unfortunately, I don't think he is. If you lose your HRH styling, you lose your working royal status, you lose all your military titles, you lose your supposed beloved charity called Senabale, you lose all of your relationships with your family that were once close, and losing all of your childhood friends and even adult UK friends and confidants. If you lose all of that and you still behave in this manner, and that doesn't teach you a little bit of humility, doesn't force you to stop, reassess, possibly determine, hey, it's time to change course here. If all of that lost doesn't do that, then nothing will. He's burned every single bridge that he's ever had in his life. And now he finds himself in this weird kind of quasi-celebrity exile in Montecito, with this life that him and his wife have supposedly built, which it doesn't really seem like they can financially sustain. What a lonely existence. She doesn't maintain any type of contact with her family, save her mother, nor does he, as we've discussed. So now what you have are two children, allegedly, that are brought into the mix now that have no real contact with anybody outside of their parents and their maternal grandmother. That's a really sick situation. That is forced separation from extended family. Do you know how much that children learn from not only their parents, of course, but from extended family members? And Harry and Meghan are denying their children of that. And we saw that completely play out over the last month. This, will they come to the UK? Won't they come to the UK? Everyone that followed that story or, was essentially force-fed that story is how we feel after a time, Anybody that was paying attention to that at all couldn't help but come away from that with a really bad taste in their mouth that basically Harry and Meghan are just using those children as leverage to get what they want with the king. I mean, they're using them as pawns in their sick manipulation game. But we have even more evidence that he hasn't learned a damn thing, that humility is not something that he understands at all, because he released a statement shortly after the judge's ruling. And it was a statement which I found interesting because it was a joint statement with himself and Baroness Doreen Lawrence. Notice none of the other claimants were included in this statement. It's quite long, it's quite verbose, it's a bit much. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there are a few little juicy nuggets in here that I am going to read to you. And he's basically starting out by saying, we came to court seeking justice and accountability, but we have received neither. The judgment represents a complete reversal of the position which previous judges have taken in relation to the hacking claims successfully brought against both News Group newspapers and Mirror Group newspapers, who were represented by, at the time, the judge who made this decision. So basically, Harry's stomping his feet and saying, hey, I've brought newspapers to court before and won. So why aren't I winning in this specific instance, right? And then, to further portray himself as the stand-up guy that he is, he proceeds to attack the judge, both professionally and personally, in my opinion. He's basically saying that, I brought these claims against those other newspaper groups back in the day. This judge was representing them at the time. So, he's basically on the side of the newspapers, was back then, and he is now. It's like, are you serious? And then he's also trying to point out that, that there was various private investigators that were involved in these past court cases, and they found situations that were very similar to what our team found in this particular case, in this instance, but that the judge just basically wholly ignored all of that. They're just ignoring it on purpose, and they're choosing to dismiss it, and they're not reconciling anything with common sense because his team had compelling evidence that they believed, was compelling at the time that they presented it to this Judge Nicklin, and it's compelling now, even though he's choosing to ignore it. It's like, seriously, how petulant and just petty can you be at this point? You can't just accept the court ruling. You can't just release a common sense standard statement after a court ruling and just say, we are disappointed with the ruling, but we accept the court ruling on this matter. Oh no. That is just too beneath Harry. He is the arbiter of justice in his own mind, and he's going to make sure that we all know that the judge was wrong. 436 pages of wrong, and Harry's going to tell us why, okay? And he uses this little turn of phrase in his statement, as we'll see, which I find particularly egregious because it basically shows him to be the sore loser that he really is. So again, he's talking about how the court's just completely ignoring all this compelling evidence that they have. They're just not reconciling anything with common sense. And then he says that the lengths to which the court has gone to exonerate the male is as shocking as it is totally unwarranted. When the court says that there is not sufficient evidence of wrongdoing, despite the documents showing otherwise, then one does wonder how justice was ever going to be achieved. And he goes on and he says, it is a complete and obvious whitewash. Pay attention to that word, whitewash, but sadly not altogether unexpected. And he's basically saying that the lengths that the court had gone to exonerate the male, it's shocking. It feels like there's one rule for the newspapers and another for the claimants. While the claimants present evidence, male journalists simply gave denials, and the court chose uncritically to believe them, even in the face of inconsistencies, contradictions, blatant untruth. It's like, really? Again, suspicion and your so-called evidence was still not enough. The judge outlined it in 400 some odd pages that it still wasn't enough. It wasn't concrete evidence to prove anything. The burden of truth is not on the claimants. Of course, the claimants are going to sit in court and deny what is being thrown to them and offer up their explanations. But the burden of truth is not on them. It's on Harry and his legal team. And the judge said over and over that was not achieved. It was not achieved. So did you pay attention to that word whitewashing? If you haven't heard the term whitewashing is something that originated in around the 15th and 16th centuries. And what whitewash was it was a simple liquid mixture made of slaked lime and chalk mixed with water. And it was used for centuries basically to paint over rough and kind of dirty and worn exterior walls, along fences, along barns, along the insides of stables. And it wasn't a modern type of durable paint that we think of now when we think of, painting something. It was basically just a quick, inexpensive way to kind of clean up dirty walls, to just camouflage it so that everything looked clean and bright and uniform from a distance. But now in modern everyday context, especially now in this legal case, when you say that something has been whitewashed, what you're asserting is that something has deliberately been done to conceal or gloss over evidence, that you're trying to cover up flaws and mistakes. When people use that phrase in legal cases or say in politics, like when you're accusing a politician of whitewashing an issue or something, basically what you're inserting is that real truths are being covered up. And in the case of a police investigation or a court case, that a real investigative look at the facts didn't happen, that everything was just kind of glossed over, and that the truth is being hidden by this veneer of cleanliness, even though it's not really clean. So this is going far beyond standard legal disagreements. He's personally attacking the court. And as I mentioned, in my opinion, he's attacking that Judge Nicklin professionally and personally as well. And what he's doing is marring and disparaging the integrity of his father's court system. These judges are appointed by His Majesty King Charles. This is His Majesty's Court of Justice, and all Harry is doing is serving to undermine its reputation and integrity in the public eye. Here you have a prince of the realm publicly trashing a judge's reputation. This is highly unusual, and this is not standard legal etiquette. You don't go out in this aggressive, petulant, mean-spirited statement and start taking personal and professional swipes at people. And not only is he calling into question the integrity of his father's court system in the public, basically trashing his father's courts, but he's rejecting the entire legal standard of proof, the burden of proof that his legal team was expected to provide, which they didn't. The judge said that they didn't. And this is just a broader pattern of Prince Harry's behavior. When something doesn't go his way, when he loses a court case, when he's told no, what does he do? He blames the British media, he blames the British courts, he blames the British government, he blames the British establishment. It's the world against him. He's not acknowledging the legal boundaries of his claims. He's just pointing the finger like how he did last year over his security and calling it an establishment stitch-up, even suggesting to the BBC in his interview that, the establishment wants him dead because they don't want to give him proper security. And now he's pointing to his father's courts and calling it this legal whitewash, that justice wasn't served. And not only wasn't it served, but it was intentionally not served because that judge had it out for him, right? And that judge was in bed with the newspapers. And here, you guys, I just want to insert and take a pause to remind us all that for someone as mentally unstable as Harry has proved himself to be, this is all very, very dangerous territory for him to be in now. Because think about it, he's been very successful in the past few years in proving to all of us that he is mentally unstable, okay? He doesn't seem to adhere to the tenets of reality that most of us adults walking around functioning in today's society recognize. I mean, the writing has been on the wall for this man in the simplest ABC language you can imagine, but he still doesn't seem to be able to decipher any of it. I personally feel that this is where we will start seeing some real potential personal breakdowns for this man. This court case was essentially his last lifeline to vindicate himself in his mind, right? He was going to use it to vindicate himself and prove to all of us that he wasn't crazy, that those newspapers were out to get him, and here's why. And all that's left now is public humiliation and massive, massive legal fees. I think that this is going to cause immense tension between Meghan and himself. It's already caused immense tension between Harry and his family. But going back to Montecito, having to tell his wife that they're probably going to be liable for a portion of these legal fees. Who knows? Like I mentioned, it has been reported that Sir Elton John will probably pick up the majority of them, but this is not going to end well. He's going to become more and more and more and more isolated. And we all know that his wife, I believe that she is a malignant narcissist, and I feel that narcissists, they don't take accountability. They will point the finger at everyone around them for everything that's going wrong in their life. Harry already does that to a large degree. I think Meghan does that even more so. That's how she operates and moves through the world. So she is going to blame him for this, and that's going to push him deeper and deeper and deeper into just this unbearable isolation. He's going to start buying more and more and more and more into his own narrative, into his own lies to him, to Harry. This is further proof that everyone is out to get him. He's exhausted all of his arguments. He feels that he's got bucket loads of crystal clear evidence to substantiate all of the claims that he's ever made regarding all of this crap in the courts, and the court isn't buying it, and it's just a stitch up and it's a whitewash. You cannot reason with people like this. So this is what I mean when I say he's going to become more and more isolated. This is very, very, very dangerous territory for a man like this. I know so many of you that are watching, that are in my comments, do not feel one iota of sympathy for this man. Rightly so. He's hurt a lot of people. Absolutely no denying that. I do believe that you reap what you sow. You are getting your just desserts right now, Harry. That's the God honest truth. And before a lot of you come for me and say, Jennifer, please do not feel sorry for this man. He deserves everything he gets. I do believe, again, he does deserve everything that he gets. He should be held accountable for everything that he's destroyed in his life, from his professional and financial dealings to his family relationships, all of it. He has to be taken to task over this. But I think what I'm mourning for Harry and what I see in all of this, I just sense and feel that this man really has failed. He's failed in being a decent human being. Now, I know everyone thinks that they're a decent human being, and no matter what you do in your life, you like to think that you're a decent human being. But when you're watching somebody carry on the way that he is, you're taking a step back, looking at everything that he's done. That's exactly what's happened. He's failed himself. He's failed to recognize not only his own self-worth and that he shouldn't be acting like this, but he's failed to realize the value and the worth of every single person around him that he's encountered in his entire life, that he's blamed for everything that has gone wrong in his life. He's failed to see their humanity, their decency. He's failed to devise some type of way to move about the world where he can work with others to produce positive outcomes. And that's what happens when you are too dangerously self-introspective and indulgent the way that this man and his wife are, in my opinion. He's so worried about his own feelings, his own state, his mental health, how everything has affected him. And in my opinion, this whole woke, progressive, new agey type of religion that people like Harry aspire to, because make no mistake, it has nothing to do with Christianity. You get so wrapped up in looking at how everything affects you, and you kind of make excuses for it, and you try to validate it by saying, well, I'm trying to make myself as good of a person that I can be. And once I'm there, I can then best serve others around me. And I think it's a really sneaky way that Harry and people like him and Meghan try to justify their own selfishness, but I don't buy any of it. At a certain point, you have to take responsibility. You have to stop blaming others. You have to put yourself in other people's shoes, to try to look at things from other people's perspective. And you have to allow them the same courtesies and sympathies that you expect for yourself. People deserve that. Everyone in Harry's life that he's ever known deserve that. Everyone that he has blamed, everyone that he's accused, everyone that he's targeted, from his father to his brother to people at his school, Eton, when he was at his boarding school, to people in the palace that he felt had it out against him, the men in gray suits, men that had it against him and his wife. Everyone that he's blamed, everyone that he despises, all these people have been damaged emotionally by Harry. I mean, he claims emotional damage, but what he doesn't see is that they've suffered too. It's not just a one-way street. Everyone that he's come into contact with has suffered. But what makes this so tragic is he's cut off so many people, like literally cut people out of his life over these perceived slights and these perceived grievances. He's often said, I want reconciliation, but they have to make the first move. They have to come to me and apologize. It's these perceived slights that are taking over his life. It's ego that's taken over his life. And it's so shallow and it's so petty. There's an adage that goes around when you talk about healthy relationships, and it's, would you rather be right all the time in a relationship, or would you rather be happy? I'm sure that if you actually did go to your family with honest intentions, without an agenda, without a campaign of making them wrong to satisfy your own ego, I'm sure that if you had a dialogue and you sat down and have a real conversation, an honest conversation where you weren't trying to one-up the other person, you would see that, yes, you suffered, but let's talk about what they felt, what they experienced. And in that dialogue, in that back and forth, then you do come to a meeting of the minds. You do come to a meeting of the hearts. People can repair relationships. They can move forward. And oftentimes, you will get an apology. A lot of the times you'll get an apology from someone where you might not have expected it, but when you allow them to speak and give them the floor to share what they went through and how they were hurt, then that can naturally open up, and those apologies and those coming togethers can happen. But when you approach everything from an I'm right, they're wrong, and I'll only talk to them if they tell me that, they're wrong in every single instance of everything that it's ever happened. It's like, what? What are you doing? What example are you living? You're so-called all about charity and compassion, you and your wife, and all these charitable organizations. What are you showing the public? And moreover, what are you teaching your children, Harry? And this destructive, close-minded, anti-Christian way of behaving, all it serves to do is make him more desperate, more aggressive, more suspicious, more isolated, banging on and on and on about grievances that happened months, years, even decades ago. I can't imagine anything more despairing and unhealthy the way that Prince Harry lives his life. I feel like this man needs some serious Christian faith formation and needs it fast, because all he's doing is wallowing in this dangerous self-important self-rumination constantly, and it's getting him nowhere. And that's what happens when you set out to prove to everyone that you're a victim and that everyone has wronged you. So now he just finds himself in this state of victimhood and grievance. And that's what happens when you fail to communicate with people. And this is where we find ourselves, you guys. His perpetual state of victimhood has left him isolated, has left him more deeply suspicious than ever, a really dangerous spot to be in. And now no one wants to be around him. No one trusts him. They view him as selfish. They view him as petulant. And what kind of life is that? You know, what were the two greatest commandments of our Lord? The first were love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. And the second commandment was love your neighbor as yourself. There was nothing in there talking about making sure that you're so self-actualized to the point that you've isolated and hurt everyone around you. And when you're really paying attention to those two great commandments, loving the Lord with everything you are and loving your neighbor just as you would love yourself, you don't really have time to be in this self-imposed rumination, isolation, where all you're doing is wallowing in your own self-pity and pointing the finger at everyone around you. So I think we can all collectively sigh with relief and agree that he is getting his just desserts. He's getting exactly what he deserves, that he dug his own hole and now he's sitting in it. But I guess I bring these other points up because it is a dangerous, isolated, horrible place to be in. And he's gotten there through a situation of his own making. But it still is a deep tragedy in the sense that this is not the way our Lord and Savior wants us to live. Isolated and alone and suspicious of everyone around us. It's a selfish way to live. It's all about self-preservation and ego and needing to be right, instead of doing what is right, working with other people to bring about more happiness and more positivity. The world is dark and bleak enough. Why can't we at least start with our families in trying to mend fences and bridges? And yes, I do understand that there are a lot of people, maybe even watching this video now, that have had such tragedy in their families that they can't mend fences or allow toxic, evil people back into their lives just, to protect themselves and their families. Sometimes even protect their physical well-being. That is understood, but just make no mistake, that is not what is happening here. In Harry's case, it's all about ego, it's all about pride, and it's all about self-destructiveness. We need to look at this man as a cautionary tale. We need to look at this man as a template of what not to do. Do not carry on like this. When you are told no the upteenth time, maybe you should buy yourself a clue that maybe I'm being told for a very valid, specific, and just reason. Sometimes we have to look around in our lives, and Harry is a great example for this. When you look and you see everything in your life crumbling professionally and, more importantly, personally, you have to rectify this in your head at some point. What is the common denominator here? Well, the common denominator is Harry. And in our lives, when things around us start to crumble, what is the common denominator? What are we doing to participate in the destruction of good things in our lives? Because to some extent, we all do it. I know so many of you have absolutely no sympathy for him. I don't either, in the sense that I feel, again, like he is getting what he deserves. But where I do feel that this is such a tragedy is looking at this man who was afforded so much privilege in his life and so much opportunity, and how he squandered it, and how he squandered it through his own petulant and just arrogant nature. It's so sad. It really is a tragedy. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments down below. Thank you so much, you guys, for helping me get to 30K. Could not have done it without you. Let's get to 40K, okay? Like the video, support the channel, and I'll also link my podcasts in the description. I'm on Spotify and I'm on Apple Podcasts as well, so you can find me over there. I'm trying to grow the channel, you guys. I'm trying to build an audience because God forbid something happens out in the YouTube universe here. Channels are getting demonetized, channels are getting deplatformed. It's a really, really scary time to be a YouTuber. So you never know what could happen out here. And if I build up a sizable audience, then more opportunities can come my way and help me to continue with the channel. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I was glad I had a little bit of time to turn on the camera today and talk to you. As you know, we are relocating back to the States from Germany. We've been here a year, got a lot coming up in the way of organizing and packing, but I'm gonna do my best to try to make as many forward-facing videos as I can. Sometimes I'll have a lot going on, not really knowing what's gonna be happening day to day, but thanks so much for spending the time with me, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye.
There isn't a laundry in the cosmos big enough to wash all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family. For him to complain about his privacy being invaded takes not just a biscuit, but the whole tin. Poor Harry. I feel sorry for the way a confused and angry young man has been drawn into this case.